across Australia. On that note, let's go to Canberra. Joining us live is the Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and the Labor MP Matt Thistlethwaite. Very good morning to you guys. So the big story, no doubt, out of Canberra today is going to be the rising cost of living. It looks as though it's going to be another supersized hike, so 50 points. Matt, I'll start with you here because the government has announced a whole series of longer-term measures to try and break this cycle, but not much for the now. So do mortgage holders just have to grin and bear it?
Well, interest rates, of course, Pete, are determined independently, but markets are betting that they are going to go up. The Reserve Bank's doing that to try and keep a lid on inflation, which is having an effect on cost of living pressures. We're aware of that. You would have seen yesterday that the government announced the highest indexation we've had in 30 years for pensions across the country, so that will provide some relief for pensioners. We've got the longer term policies that you mentioned around cheaper childcare, making electric vehicles cheaper and the like. But really, Pete, we need to get real wages increasing. And the government's been saying that consistently. And we have taken action to do that. We supported a real wage increase for the lowest paid workers with the minimum wage case, and they delivered a 5.2% increase to ensure that low-wage workers kept pace with inflation. But we're now talking about reforming the bargaining system to make it easier for wages to increase. At the end of the day, you've got to get real wages increasing, and that's what we're going to do. Right.
Well, just one point there on the help for pensioners, which is no doubt of serious help for them, but that would have been the case for whoever was in government, right? It's indexed twice a year.
Yeah, it is indexed twice a year. We all know that, but it is a big help for pensioners. And we've been getting a lot of traffic in recent years from pensioners who've been saying that indexation hasn't kept up. Well, it's now starting to increase, and that will provide some relief for pensioners. But it's coupled with the other things that we're doing across the board, but particularly trying to raise real wages.
Holly, over to you. What can be done in the short term?
Well, just to come back to indexation, I mean, it's hilarious to think that the Labor Party's taken claim for the greatest level of indexation, the pension scheme. The indexation is directly related to the rate of inflation, and that's because inflation is incredibly high at the moment, which is why the indexation has been at the level it is. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be enough to keep up for most people because cost of living pressures are only seeking to increase. Just previously, we were hearing that cost of fruit and veg are going to go up under the weather conditions. Matt here talking about increasing real wages. Well, if we look at how the unions are planning to do that, it's through unilateral strikes. Now, if you look at the logistics sector, which is talking about it in the paper today, that major players will be able to go out on strike at the same time. Part of the inflationary pressures are due to supply chain issues. We can't get workers in the field to make sure that these supply chain issues are being eased. And if we start to see major logistics companies going out on strikes at the same time, those grocery prices and everything else are going to go sky high, putting more pressure on families. We know the fuel excise coming off will put more pressure on families, the reduction that we put into place. But we also know with the abolition of the ABCC, we're going to see more strikes and bigger problems on building sites, which is going to continue to increase cost of living pressures. It is just insanity to talk about real wages increasing with a reduction of productivity occurring. And one of the things that could be encouraged in a real sense now, well, there's a couple of things. The first one is the proposal we put forward to allow pensioners, whether they're aged pensioners or disability support pensioners, to be able to double the hours that they can work without having that, that pension impact.
And Labor has said that it is going to move on that.
People in the workplace now. Oh, well, they're thinking about it, but not the proposal we've put forward. They're putting it, well, yes, at a much lesser rate than what they could actually do. So we're looking at moving further on that. There's a bill that's currently before the Senate being discussed, which will boost that even further. But we also need to make sure that we are increasing productivity, and that means people need to come back into the workplace. So that's going to require a national effort. I think when people were locked down at home, they were doing a lot of work. I think a lot of these work from home option nows are seeing people perhaps not being productive as they could be.
Matt, Jim Chalmers had said during the election campaign, it was his big pitch that he wanted to see a rise in real wages this term. But given all of these moving parts, is there any way to still guarantee that?
Well, supporting a real wage increase for the lowest paid workers, about 1 million workers throughout the country, is the best way to do that. And that's what the government did. through the minimum wage case, and that's now flowing through to the pay packets of the lowest paid workers throughout the country. The outcomes of the Jobs and Skills Summit, I think, are pretty important. Holly mentions sector-wide bargaining. That was an outcome of the Jobs and Skills Summit. The Council on Small Business of Australia,
the one participant from small
the Business Council of Australia and other employer bodies have come together with the union movement and government to look at some of the bottlenecks in the system to ensuring that we're getting productivity increases and that we can get real wages increasing. And collectively, we've come together and brought Australians together and developed an ethos for a new system that will get wages increasing. And that's the best thing, and that's the role that government should be playing.
Yeah,
bringing Australians together to fix the problems in our bargaining system and get real wages increasing.
But should you be...
Small business, one seat at the table. Unions, 33 seats at the table. 33 seats at the table for a sector that represent less than 10% of workers. 41% of Australians are employed by small businesses, yet COSBOA, the one seat at the table, and quite frankly, looking at what COSBOA is doing, I'm not quite sure they're actually representing the interests of small businesses or their board members.
Is there any way to guarantee against industry-wide strikes, Matt?
Yeah, of course there is. You put measures in the legislation to ensure that industrial action can only occur in rare circumstances and can only occur with the imprimatur of the Fair Work Commission. And that's similar to the system that we have in place at the moment. I think we need to recognise that in terms of international comparisons, Australia has a very, very low rate of unions or workers taking industrial action. And the system generally, I think, that was established by the Hawke and Keating governments of enterprise bargaining, productivity-based increases, has served us well. Right. But it's 30 years down the track and it's time for an update, and that's what the government will deliver.
Well, Mr Classens has sent an email in New South Wales to the rail workers,
the rail strikes in
saying
Sydney,
that they need to keep the strike up until the election in New South Wales. So we know what the union's method is. It's not about workers or conditions. It's not about anything that they originally said they wanted. It's about disrupting services to everyday people in New South Wales until the state election, because their agenda is to see Labor governments, because as we see in Parliament House now, the unions are taking over.
Matt,
well, I think you need to recognise that industrial action is taken in accordance with the legislation. It's what they call protected industrial action.
Well, you explain Mr Classens' email then, who's on your administrative body.
The Fair Work Commission. The notice is given.
No conflict of interest here.
You know, there's international agreements that Australia signed up to which give workers the right to take industrial action as a last resort.
Nothing to see here. Nothing to
Matt
see
and Holly,
here.
we're out of time.
Secretary.
We will have to leave it there. I do want to close, though, on a little birdie telling me, Matt, that it's your 50th birthday today. Is that right?
It is, mate. No, I couldn't think of a better way to start my 50th birthday than with you and Holly.
Happy birthday, Matt. He's just thrilled to be with me at the beginning of the day.
Happy birthday to you. How are you feeling about it? The milestone.
Mate, it's only a number. You're as young as you feel, so I still feel 24.
That's all right. I identify as a 27-year-old. We're all good, Matt.
But, well, a very happy birthday to you, Matt. Well done, and thank you for spending part of that on the program this morning. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Holly, as well. Well, coming